My name Glen Jarvis, and in 1941 I was 19 years old, and that's when my mother and dad still lived on a farm at Hazel Glen. That's where me and my brother went to school there at the Hazel Glen School, 8 grades all in one room. Doyle McKinney was our teacher. Me and my brother used to walk. He said it was 2.5 miles to school, but I think it was more like 3.5. It's 2.5 country miles, I think. And we walked back and forth, and me and my brother, sometimes it'd get a little warm in the spring, we'd pull our shoes off and go barefooted to home. We'd get almost home, we'd stop and put our shoes on so we wouldn't get balled out. And we used to take our lunch in a large bucket, the two of us, and we'd stop down by the end of the lane. We had the apple trees there. We'd fill our pockets up these apples and eat on the way. And it was really back in the Depression days. Nobody had anything hardly, and in fact we never had no money hardly. My dad didn't. We didn't have any, but I look back now, and I think it's some of the best years of my life. And my dad worked so hard that I used to see him take his pocket knife and trim the calluses off his hands. And he had a hard time just getting enough money to pay the taxes on the farm. And I wasn't but 17 years old. And I quit school, and I came up here at San Luis and got a job at Lane Box Company for 35 cents an hour. And I was glad to get it. For all you could get down there was working for a farmer or somebody for $1 a day in your dinner. And he was lucky to get that. My mother and dad wanted me to stay home, but I wanted to make some money, you know. But every weekend I'd be home. I'd catch a Wallen bus and go down there, but I soon found out I could catch a streetcar out to the city of Livingston, hitchhike home. I'd get home faster than I did on the bus. And that was, I guess, about, in 41, that's when Pearl Harbor got bombed. And I was having such a good time. I thought, well, that war will be over before I get in it. Well, I was so wrong about that. And 42, I guess, well, when I got my draft notice in December of 42. And that's when I went in the Army. And most of the guys was all going in the Army then. I was worried I wouldn't pass or something because I want to get in there too. So in 42, and that's when I wound up Jefferson Barracks, and we was only there a couple of days. And they got in there. I was really surprised. All the good food they gave us, you know, I guess we had really good food as we went in, but we were only there 2 or 3 days. And I remember I had to start washing my own clothes, and I didn't like that very much, but we shipped.
What all did you do at Jefferson Barracks as far as you take tests, get shots?
Yeah, they give us their physical, and that's why I was worried. I was afraid maybe I wouldn't pass, you know, and but I passed all right, no problem at all. And they shipped us out we went on a train to Camp Stewart, Georgia. Now they call it Fort Stewart, Georgia. That's where we got our basic training there. And at first we were in 40mm guns, and for a short time, and then they switched us over these half tracks, and that's where we trained on these half tracks. And we was there, I think, 3 months at Camp Stewart, Georgia. And we got...
How did you train? What kind of training on the camps?
Well, we did fire them. We had a firing range out there, and they'd pull a target by with a plane, I believe, and we'd fire on these targets with these machine guns. And I think at first on them 40 millimeters, I think the first guy we let, one of the other guys in the other battery had a muzzle burst and he got killed there. I think that's the first guy in our outfit got killed. And we got orders to leave there, and we was tickled to death to get out of that place. They call it Swamp Stewart, Georgia. It was all new when we moved in there. We were the first soldiers in these barracks. And they even had stumps in the middle of the streets there, and we had to dig these stumps out. And that basic training was pretty rough, but we was tickled to death when we was going to California, but we wound up in the desert, and that was worse shit. They took us on a train. We fastened all these half tracks down on flat cars, and that's how they moved the half tracks right along with us. And when we got out in the desert there, I was an assistant driver, and the driver on there went home on furlough, and I had to do the driving cross country, and I think it was about 75 miles cross country in the desert, and that was really rough. Boy, it was so hot out there. In one camp, we'd go to, they had a shower there. We'd go take a shower. We'd had in coveralls. We'd just soap up our coveralls on us before we get back to the barracks. They'd be dry, and all the food we got was all this dehydrated eggs and dehydrated potatoes, and the food was terrible. And but anyway, we went on maneuvers there with the Armored Division. We went into close to Death Valley there, and boy, the dust was so deep that we wore a dust mask over our face and the training we had there. And at one time we was on a maneuver, and we were supposed to have been cut off from the enemy, and we didn't get no food for about 24 hours. And we had these supposed to be emergency rations in the half track. We kept in the wells at half track. Go ahead and eat them, and never like dog biscuits. But the water, we have a small canteen of water, and you just take a little sip of that. That's all you're supposed to take for your water. And we washed our mess kits out with the sand. And
was that the 9th Armored Division that was there?
yes, that was 9th Armored Division. We was attached to them. And the dust was deep, almost a foot deep. We go over them trails where the tanks and everybody followed in them trails. I don't know, I think they could see you for 20 miles with the dust flying, And but that's where we got our training there. And by the time we got our training all in, well, the campaign ended in Africa over there, I believe, where the United States was in the war. And so they shipped us back east, and we went back to, I believe it was Camp Pickett, Virginia. And we was on a train for about 8 days, coming from California to back east. And we even had our chow truck, our chow car that cooks fixed the food we were on a train. We really got tired riding on that train, because every time we'd come to a town or something, we'd sidetrack and let the fast trains go by, And we took a lot more train after we got there, and then I think we was up to, we went to Fort Dix, New Jersey. We stayed there a while, and then they took us, at one time they took us up to Cape Cod. All the guys on the gun crews and that, we went up there and practiced firing at the targets out over the bay there. and it was so cold, boy, a big snow one, and it was really cold. And then we came back to Fort Dix, came back Fort Dix, and I don't know, we got ready to ship out. They shipped us up to a new camp up in New York. That's where we loaded on the boat there to go to Europe. And I think we was about 8 or 9 days going across on these boats, and I think everybody that goes across usually hit a storm, and everybody was seasick, and a lot of the guys never ate nothing for days there. I think I kept trying to nibble on a little food I could eat a little bit, but I never did stop eating altogether.
You were with the 467th the whole time?
Yeah, 467. That's one thing that worried me during the whole war. All the guys we trained with, and we got to be like brothers. And I was always worried I'd get wounded or something and get shipped out to a different outfit or something. But I never did. I was lucky that way, I guess. But we got unloaded in England. There was air raids there in most of these towns by every night or so. It was hitting right close by. You could hear the bombs falling in the next town. But we were staying in billets with the English people. There'd be 3 or 4 guys in one house and 3 or 4 guys in the next house. And then every morning the sergeant would be out there blowing the whistle about daylight, and everybody would be falling out with their mess kits. But the English people never complained or nothing. All the noise was making, And then we had our kitchen was about, I guess, down the other end of town, about a mile, I guess. We had to walk there before we could eat breakfast. And we had a motor pool. It was 5 miles out of town. We used to have to walk out there to the motor pool all the time, walk back. And I remember we was walking out there, and here come the British soldiers in American-made trucks by, and they were riding in their trucks, and we were walking. The guys are hollering back and forth to these guys. There wasn't nothing really bad about it, but it's just the idea that they had the American trucks to ride in when we was walking. The British people, I think, are the most patient people in the world. But they used to have air raids and all that, and there's a warden that come around and make sure that everything was blacked out, and all the houses was had all blacked out, and we'd go out at night there. It was so dark. I've never seen any places so dark, I don't think. We just feel our way along the fence to figure out the gate where we were staying, have to get in the house. And they had some USO dances there sometimes. You used to go to a dance. I remember when I went to a dance with this English girl, and they had an air raid while we was there, and they stopped the dance, and everybody wanted to get home. Me and her was running across the empty lots and everything to get to her house, and she was staying with her sister-in-law, I think it was, and we were hammering on the door to get in, and we got in, and this lady and 2 little kids were underneath the steps, but I kept telling them, no, there's nothing going to happen, but they knew better. They went through these raids before we got there, But anyway, I think about it now, and I think why it's a terrible thing. As people went through. And boy, the British never had nothing hardly, and you couldn't hardly, about the only thing you could go downtown, you could buy, they call fish and chips. It was fish and french fries, what it was. They were really good, but that's about the only thing I remember buying there to eat. But of course we ate with the army, but when you go out, you always want to stop and get something to eat I bummed around there with a British soldier quite a bit. But American boys always had a little money. They got paid more than the British soldiers did. And we did a lot of training in England there. We went over these obstacle courses, and a short time before the invasion, we went on these landings. We landed on Slapton Sands. I mean, you've probably heard of that place. And we were bombed real like the real thing. I done this, made it all right, but later on I sunk American ships with a torpedo boat. We didn't know about it till later on, but everything went all right, and they said we did a great job with landing there. But then we loaded up on these landing crafts, was going to make the invasion. But first we were in this marshalling area there in England. It was like out in the woods, and we was living in tents, and we were rubbing elbows with the best, all the Rangers and the infantry, and anyway, and they had kitchens set up there. You could eat any time of the day, and boy, we had the best food, pork chops and fried chicken and anything you wanted, you know. And everybody said, well, they're fattening us up for the kill, you know. But every day we was digging a foxhole about alongside of these tents, because they had air raids every night. And we sit there and watch these air raids with the fighter planes chasing the German planes, and they'd dive on them, and then sometimes I guess they got a call and they'd back off, and then the anti-aircraft would open up on them. And anti-aircraft was manned by British women mostly, and they was the one that shot these guns. But boy, we had a show there almost every night. But I think every day we'd dig our foxhole a little bit deeper, you know. And all we do was take our guns apart and put them back together, and we had these trench knife. We used to sharpen them up, and we'd practice throwing these trench knives at the trees there, you know. They could stick about every time, but we stayed there, and they had a wire fence around us like a prison. Nobody could go in or nobody come out.
But how long were you in that area?
We were in there a couple of weeks, I think we were there. And they're getting all these troops together, you know, all the infantry and the artillery guys and the Rangers. And Rangers are about as tough as guys that come, I think. And anyway, we loaded on that boat, landing craft there in England, and we sat there, I don't know, several days before we ever got pulled out of there. And we pulled out, was supposed to go on the invasion, and that was on June the 5th. And the weather was so bad, and that's when Eisenhower called it off. And we turned around and came back. And next day, well, they went ahead with it. But the weather was still so bad, and we was crossing the channel on these landing craft LCTs, and they were a flat bottom boat, and they were going up and down so bad everybody was seasick. And we got over to England, we got over to France, and boy, it was as far as you could see in any direction with nothing but battleships and landing craft, and we were scheduled to go in at 8 o'clock, I believe it was, but everything was backed up so bad we didn't get in there until I think it was after 10 o'clock, and the landing craft we was in, and boy, the noise was something terrible. All these big battleships going off, their guns going off, and they keep telling us to keep your head down. Nobody had to tell us twice and to keep your head down, because bullets were flying. And first we land in with this landing craft, and the skipper dropped the ramp first half track off hit a bomb hole, and he backed off and took a little circle and went back in a different spot, and that's where we got off. And then after we landed on the beach, some of the guys, we had winches on these half tracks, was going to try to get one out. It went in this whole bomb hole, and they lost both of them. I think they couldn't get them out. But all these half tracks were waterproof. That was supposed to have been a top secret too. And we went in at a low tide, and the drivers were still water running through the seats on these drivers. They were sitting there. They had these waterproofing was something like Play-Doh. They put in all the distributor and the wires and everything, and you could drive right through that water, and that's what was a top secret. And we got off on the beach, and I guess it was the sea breeze had us just a path through these obstacles that was in the beach, cleared. That's where we kept in this like a path through there, getting through there. We went as far as we could get on the beach, but we couldn't get no further because there was a big gun position up here on this bluff. They couldn't fire down on us. They was firing on the ships out there in the ocean, in the English Channel, and finally late that evening, a big battleship pulled in close as they get, and they blasted that gun position out, the German gun position, and that's when we got off the beach and went up. It was like a country road up through all over this bluff, and we felt like the war is over. If you ever dreamed you went to hell, that was it. All these movies I've seen about D-Day, nothing even comes close. There was gasoline trucks burning up, and the tanks are hitting these landmines, and there's dead everywhere. And guys screaming for help. But let's look at our only good thing, the Germans didn't have that many planes to send in there. I think they sent about 1 or 2 planes we seen. That's the reason we landed with these half tracks, supposed to knock down any enemy planes that come in strafing on the beach. But we got as far as we get, and there wasn't nothing for us to shoot at. The infantry was going over the top, but we couldn't get up that road past this German gun position, and our captain orders off of the half track. We was just sitting there like sitting ducks, and they were raining mortar shells in there on everybody. And finally, captain orders off of the half track, and we just take cover there, and we jump in a spot, and the shells start hitting around us. We jump in another spot, and I jumped in a hole with the guy that was in there. Here he had a bullet when he'd been shot through the leg, but he'd already had his first aid, but he's just waiting to get him back on a boat, send him back to England, the hospital. But I was told him, I said, boy, you got $1 million wound there. But finally we got off of that beach, and we got up just a short distance there, because we was hanging by our teeth there in Normandy for 5 or 6 days, I think, till they get equipment, and they was, the United States Army was just piling everything in there with these different tank divisions and the infantry divisions, and we landed with the 1st Infantry, I think 29th Regiment we landed with. And that first night we got in and we was just in the edge of a little field there, and we dug in, and it's about dark. Here come a German spy plane, and we wasn't allowed to fire on them, though, give away our position, you know. And you could look up, you could see the pilot in a plane, and I forget what, I'm trying to think of what they called us there. Every night they'd come over just about dark, and them spy plane, you know, trying to spot out your positions and everything. But then we got up to St. Miraglese, I believe it was the first little town we got to, and the Germans was on high ground there, and they zeroed in on us with their 88s, and they knocked out a couple of our half-tracks, and it was about 8 or 10 guys, I think, got wounded, but none of them, I don't think, too seriously. But they knocked out 2 half-tracks, and some of us on the half-track guys, and they ordered us back to the beach, top of the beach where we was at down there, because they thought the Germans was going to counterattack there. And we got back there, we got close there, and all the fields were marked with landmines. But some of them had landmines, some didn't. But the Frenchman told us that you could figure out one that had landmines for it, one didn't have. There was cows in these pastures, you know. But we had to go through a marked landmine. We was in the front of the half-track with a bayonet probing in the ground to make sure there wasn't no landmines in there. We got back to the top of the beach, and they were still digging trenches with bulldozers and burying the dead. For a couple, 3 days there, they were burying the dead. But later on, I think they took them. It was over 2,000. We low, and we were
Did you go in on?
almost. So I don't forget where it was. It was on with the 29th Regiment. I know that, and. Not as many men got killed, and equipment got, the medics found these dog tags, and guys got wounded, but it's mostly bad. But one of the half-tracks on the other guys, they off the beach there, big American planes, and the night before they missed the target, and all the fields were bunkers in there. I don't big battleships knocked them out, knocked them out, and the Germans had a panzer division on maneuvers right in back of that beach. That's why it was so rough on Omaha. Some of the other beaches didn't have as much trouble, but Omaha was really a bad one. That's where we went in. But before we got into St. Lo, we were for a while and through St. Lo where they bombed us so bad. But before we got off these, when they'd go off, the trees looked like they was going to come apart, often from the concussion from them. And we got to where we'd stand up on our toes, you know, when them guns would fire, keep from getting the concussion from them guns. But today they took St. Lo, they came over. Boy, I've never seen so many planes bombing. And we was a short distance, but from the city there, and American planes dropped some bombs short. One of the officers on the other battery got killed, and a few men got hit too and got killed from our own planes. But that's what happens when war is going on. There's several times during the war we got a strafe of stage we'd throw out, and they'd know it was. I remember one time, it seemed like all of us was moving up at night in a Sarah, and was in a Sarah, radioed back. We had radio tracks, but they radioed back. Then enemy about daylight, all hell broke loose, and you could hear the guns going off, and here come one of our sergeants, dozen prisoners, and that's the way it was. And a lot of times we'd pull up at night, and we were tasked for quite a while there with the 3rd Army, and it'd be tank burning in the street and dead soldiers laying on the sidewalk. We'd keep on going. Next day, the infantry come through and clean up. And when Patton decided to take something, he took it. Boy, he didn't hesitate. And with them tanks and that armored divisions, and most of the time later on, we were outposts for the artillery. And we was just with this one outfit, and they was self-propelled like we were, you know, and they'd pull in the field, and they wouldn't be 5 minutes till they'd be set up firing. And we'd pull on the outside, and in the corner of the field or something, we'd use us for outposts to keep anybody from sneaking in on them, you know. And but a lot of times we'd be moving up at night, and there'd be a tank hit in the road, and they'd be sitting there burning. We'd go around and just keep on going. And sometimes the Germans would come over and start dropping flares, and it'd be lit up like daytime, but we wasn't allowed to start firing on them at nighttime like that when they wouldn't want to give away the positions and that. But later on, I'll tell you about Bastogne. We were down the other end of France, and they was going to make a drive up through the mountains. And that's when the Germans made that big breakthrough right before Christmas there. And we was driving day and night get us back up there with 3rd Army, and we were with 3rd Army all the time. We went back to getting us back to Bastogne. We got up there, and it was 18 below zero. And we going into Bastogne. American tanks were sitting along the road, pointing out both ways, keep the road open to get us in there. There's an officer from the 101st Airborne come and got us, and he said we're going to make an attempt to get in there because they had all the anti-aircraft knocked out. We got into Bastogne that first night, and here come the German planes bombing. And I guess they didn't know we was in there yet. When we opened up, it looked like 4th of July. We knocked down a few of them, but most of the time it was anti-aircraft guns, especially the 450s I was on. They just throw up a barrage, you know, and they keep them up there high enough they know how high to stay up out of the range and keep them from hitting their target. And the same thing at the Remagen bridgehead. I think that's the first time the Germans started using their jet planes. And we come in and we'd fire them, and they'd miss the target a mile there. And they finally, that bridge fell in that they were crossing there at the Remagen bridgehead, and we were sitting there protecting the engineers that was putting across the pontoon bridge when they got the bridge across. So we went across this pontoon bridge there at Remagen. And the Germans are right on the, when we first got there, they were right across the river on the other side. You see them up there, but after we crossed there, and that was starting to the last part of the war, I think, you know, then they were moving pretty fast. In the last days of the war, we were pulling up in Germany there, and German prisoners would be truckloads of them going one way, and we'd go the other. They just keep on going back. It's all given up, you know. They'd wind up to a stockade back behind the lines. And the war ended, we were in Czechoslovakia. We were in just outside of, I believe it was it Pilsen, Czechoslovakia? Anyway, it was this town, and I remember there's a German plane come flying in there, and nobody told us. We didn't fire on them. They just coming in there for a landing, and they were giving up. We could have shot them down, but we didn't do it. We knew it was the end of the war, and right away we got in the Army occupation. That's when we went to Munich, Germany, and that's where we stayed there in the Army occupation for 5 months till we got shipped home. And they all got shipped home with the highest points got first. The guys that got wounded had extra points, and myself, I never got a lick through all that. And I was just glad to get home. But when we came across the ocean, got on New York there, I think there was a Red Cross had some donuts, but I think the people had forgot about the war, and we got picked up with the Army trucks and they took us to the camp. But boy, I was scared coming in. The place was lit up like daylight, all these lights, and I was sure we were going to get bombed straight. But I never got hit, but I got a bad case of nerves. When I got home, I got married right away, and I guess I should have waited, but I got married right away, for I was engaged before I even went in the Army. And half the time at night, I'd wake up throwing my arms and everything, and I'd get up and sleep on the couch. But it was the Jefferson Base when I get discharged. I told them about my legs jerking like that, and they said, well, you'll be all right when you get home in civilian life. But it was 15 years before I ever stopped jerking my legs like that. But I guess I'm not complaining. I was one of the lucky guys that came through it. Boy, it's like our president of our Battle of the Bulge Club, he always says, just remember, freedom's not free. He says there's a lot of young men over there in them cemeteries. I'm sorry, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and get to thinking about all that, but I try to remember all the time all the good things we had in the Army. I don't dwell on the... In fact, when those guys get together here in St. Louis for a breakfast about once a month, and most of the time we never even mention the war or the Army when we was in there. You know, we talk about things going on now. But I remember good things, and I think every country has good people, even in Germany. I know at one time we was staying in this German house. It was like on a farm there. This old man lived there, and there was a bunch of little kids from the towns. They took them out in this country where it wasn't bombing so much. And we was telling him this is the war, to end all wars. And he says, oh no, you're going to have to fight the Russians before it's over with. And we almost did. And one time I remember up in Belgium, we stayed with this old couple in their house, and we had our guns set up, you know, in the field there outside. This old lady, she'd cook, made some soup. It was like a real thick soup, and boy, it was really good. And we'd bring our rations in, and we'd always give them, and they had a son that lived about 20 miles away in a big snow, and he walked all I'd just come to see about his parents, you know, how they was making it all right. And anyway, we got March order to leave, and after, I think we was there close to a week, and most of the time, every day we was moving up, but we was moving up, and we kind of pulled down in this little town like, and we stopped till everybody was getting in line, and we seen this old man come running down the road there to us, waving at us, and here he had a iron skillet we'd forgotten. But that's just things you try to remember. Well, sometimes, one time, we pulled into town. I think we were the first Americans in there, and people was all there to greet us, and they was handing us a bottle of wine, and they had wet towels they'd throw to us. We could wipe the dirt off our face, and they'd hold our little babies up to give us a kiss. But I think it was in every country, though, that it was like that. Even after the war was over, there was an occupation there with the army in Munich and with the CIC men. They'd pick up these political prisoners and question them, you know, and sometimes they didn't talk. We'd take them up to the Stadtline prison, leave them overnight or so, and then they'd come back and they'd start telling everything they knew. But we was living with this in this house there, and the CIC men, they always go to a restaurant. It was like a big restaurant over in a park there in Germany, in Munich, and they'd always asked us to go along. We'd go there, and at this restaurant, they had a piano player there playing dinner music, and they had a bottle of white wine, red wine sitting on the table, and we ate like kings there. And then we'd go back, and most time our chow truck would come around, those guys on guard there, and they'd bring our food, and we'd take the food and give it to some of the civilians, you know. We'd already ate. But, yeah, and these buddies, I tell you, they're like brothers to us. You know, sometimes I say you even know them better than you know your own brother, because you'd always talk about what you did growing up and about your family back home and everything. You really, and our outfit was mostly, the majority was from Missouri and Iowa. And I tell you, some of them guys up in Iowa, the best guy you ever seen in your life. And we was up there this time when my car broke down. And one couple lives there in town. I called them, and his wife came and got us, took us over to their house, and we wanted to drop us off at the restaurant when we get something to eat. He says, "Oh no, I'll fix his supper." And they took his supper and took us back to the hotel. And her husband, he's all crippled up. He's head arthritis, and his hands are all been operated on. He can't hold on to a walker like this. He's got to have one with the handles up where he can hold them. And he's had his knees operated on, his feet, but he can walk across the house anyway. And he had a heart operation, but still he's always in a good mood, talking, and always glad to see all of us. In fact, they're the ones that called us up and encourage us to come up there this time, because they keep saying every year is going to be the last one. But another guy is there. He was on an oxygen tent, or one of these oxygen, what do you call it? But I guess he's got emphysema. I guess he can't hardly breathe. But he made it down there to the reunion. But well, I think many guys left. One guy was there, Davis, lived out here in Missouri. Him and his wife and his daughter and son-in-law, they brought him up there. And everybody thought he had died. They hadn't heard from him for years. And he come out of the Army. He said he couldn't find anything. So he went back in the Air Force, and he retired from the Army. He was in there, I think, about almost 20 years in the Army. And nobody had ever heard from him, and they thought he had died. And here he called one of his buddies out in the state of Wyoming, and the guy out there had got a notice that we were having a reunion and told him about it. And his daughter got on the internet and found out all the information on it, and they've been showing up the last 2 or 3 years. But all the guys, I tell you, is salt of the earth. And all the guys, I don't know, they just seemed to, that's what they kept asking us up there to reunion this year. Some reporters were there and asked them why we always stick together, you know, all these years, and we always have a reunion. And I told them, I said, well, we're like brothers. That's one thing, I guess. And we all stuck together. If we hadn't, we wouldn't be here today.